President Trump there wrapping up a series of questions from reporters as he is in the cabinet room rolling out this multi-billion-dollar, $12 billion farmers assistance package. That's what you heard at the very beginning as the president was going around at the table. But then he took some questions from reporters talking about everything from those controversial strikes on boats in the Caribbean to the expiring Obamacare subsidies, or in effect tax credits, which are set to end at the end of this year, and the push on Capitol Hill to try to figure out some kind of a solution there. You also heard the president talk briefly about that big-time potential Paramount deal with Netflix, with Warner Brothers Discovery also in the mix. Let me bring in now our senior White House correspondent, Garrett Haake, who is joining us from the North Lawn. Garrett, let's start with this sort of non-committal moment from President Trump on releasing any video of that so-called double-tap strike on the Caribbean that has Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth really sort of backed in, at least from pressure from Congress, if you will. The president first said that he never said he'd have no problem releasing the video. He did say last week he'd have no problem releasing the video. Now it sounds like he's being deferential to Secretary Hegseth on this front, Garrett, right?
Yeah, I'd go further than a backtrack here. I mean, I think this is a reversal from the president who suggested in his comments last week, again, that he would have no problem releasing it, saying at the time he doesn't know what we had, but that he would be okay with releasing it. Now saying it would be up to Pete Hegseth. I mean, you could argue there are operational reasons why that would be the case. Several other Republicans have suggested that this is a video that would need to be reviewed to make sure that there aren't any kind of operational or tactical details that its release would somehow endanger. But the administration has put out video of every other strike that it's conducted in the Caribbean. And this change from last week to today from the president, I think, is only going to fuel concern and conspiracy among those who think the administration might have something that they don't want shown publicly here about how this strike was conducted.
There's also a number of other topics that the president addressed, including, of course, those expiring Obamacare subsidies, and the president suggesting that Republicans are going to have a package on the table soon at this point. Help us understand that, because right now the clock is ticking. That deadline is coming up at the end of the year, and millions of Americans could see their health care premiums double.
Yeah, Hallie, it's been more than a decade since Republicans have had anything like a consensus health care plan that they could put on the floor. They don't have one now on Capitol Hill. And I think for folks who are concerned about their premiums rising early next year, well, the president's comments here would be even more concerning, suggesting that he wants to go with a proposal that would essentially get rid of these tax credits in their entirety and to try to put more money in Americans' pockets. That doesn't reflect any sort of fulsome proposal that exists on Capitol Hill, nor does it reflect a policy that Democrats would be willing to support. And so what you're looking at here is a continuation of the standoff that led to the longest ever government shutdown. No indication from the president he's interested in having any kind of conversation with Democratic lawmakers about this as time approaches its expiration on this issue.
Before I let you go, Garrett, there's one other sort of high-interest headline that I think the president touched on very briefly as it relates to that, the takeover, if you will, of Warner Brothers Discovery. Netflix making a push. You've now got Paramount looking to make a push, and the involvement, of course, of the president's son-in-law on the part of Paramount for that. And again, the president here, just hours after blasting Paramount, now suggesting he needs to look at all of this, right, before he comes to any kind of decision?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there are a credible number of regulatory and antitrust implications of this deal. However it goes, the president's perceived perception in the business community that he would be more inclined to support a Paramount takeover because of the involvement of David Ellison, a political ally, got some cold water splashed on it this morning when the president trashed Paramount in a post complaining about a 60 Minutes piece from last night. The president's involvement and that of his FCC commissioner here could be pivotal. Today, taking a little bit more of a hands-off role, but as you say, suggesting that he will or perhaps could get more involved in the future. We've not heard the last about the White House's connection to this deal for Warner Brothers, however it goes, Hallie.
That's a good point there. Garrett Haake, live for us on the North Lawn. Garrett, thank you.
We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.